So let me welcome everyone to our United Way Oxford Community United conversation for May 2022. My name is Kelly Gilson. I'm the Executive Director with United Way Oxford, and it is my pleasure to act as sort of the host or facilitator here this evening. We are very grateful for the support of our panelists and our community as we continue this Community United series and really thrive and learn on our journey together as a community. And so as we get started, I would like to acknowledge that I'm in my office here in the city of Woodstock in Oxford County, and I am on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the very beginning. As a settler, I am grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening and to meet with you. And I thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this community, this land. And in particular, I acknowledge the traditional territory of the Ananashbek, the Lenape, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I recognize and I deeply appreciate their historic and current connection to this place. I also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples that they have made and are making, both in shaping and strengthening our community, in particular, our province and our country as a whole. As a settler, I recognize that the current contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our own communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country, and in memory of the deceased children and survivors of the Indian residential schools. I ask that each and every one of you take a moment to reflect on the ground in which you are on this evening and pay tribute to our Indigenous community. And so as we get started, again, I thank everyone for joining us. We have a great turnout this evening. And I know that this is a topic that's going to be of great interest to everyone. Just very quickly, I'll do a little shameless United Way Oxford plug, if I may, because you know me, why not? But I think it's really important to remind people that United Way is 100% local. And when we say 100% local, we mean 100% here in Oxford County, serving our community. Our community knowledge and our volunteer connections and our investments are all made here to support our community, to really move people out of poverty to possibility, to build strong communities, and to make sure that our children and youth are well supported and they can be all that they can be. I want to reflect briefly that over the last couple of years, we have seen significant changes and increasing demand for community and social services, human services, the impact of COVID. And now as things are starting to change there, we're seeing not just the impact of that, but the increasing needs, the challenges in the economy, the housing and housing crisis and the cost, the affordability from gas to food. All of these things are coming together, really challenging those that are struggling. And so as a United Way, as we build back better, as we work to ensure that supports and services are available in our community, we don't want to just return to what was our old normal. We want a more equitable and supportive recovery that provides opportunity and hope for people across our community for their future. We want to be focused, we'll focus our targets more and invest in things like making sure people have their basic needs met, that they are getting the help and support they need for housing and affordable housing and the supports for those as well as those that are homeless. We want to increase supports for mental health and addiction services for folks across our community. And we want to ensure that we have the programs that are accessible for youth to grow and thrive, to be all that they can be as they grow to adulthood. And I know that people think of United Way as a fundraiser, and we are, but above and beyond that, we fundraise to be able to invest in supports and services. And we also are really committed to building community capacity, raising awareness on issues, and inspiring volunteerism. And so this is an example. These Community United series, we've been doing them for a few years now. And our goal is to shine a light on unignorable issues or challenges in our community, frankly, in every community, so that we can understand, that we can grow, we can build awareness and empathy, and that we can all learn more, to do more, to of course, do better. So this virtual world has been a really great opportunity to be able to do that. Our show or series this evening will be recorded and available for our workplaces. It'll be on our website. It'll be available for people if they wanted to show it for a lunch and learn, or at their book club on a Wednesday evening. So it's there for you. And we thank Rogers Cable as well, because they pick up our series and show them across our community as well. So while virtual is fantastic, I will remind everyone that virtual still comes with its own challenges, which could be barking dogs or crying babies or any of those things, the you're on mute, all of those things that we've heard throughout this last few years. That's the reality of this virtual world. So thank you for joining us. You will see the panelists here, and I will introduce them in just a moment. You will be able, as an audience, to chat and ask questions. And our wonderful United Way team of one, Amanda, will be making sure she's following that, and we will do our very best to answer your questions as the evening goes on. And we will also be able to put up some supports and resources that you might find helpful also. I would be remiss not to thank Enbridge. Enbridge has sponsored this particular event for us, and we are ever so grateful for their support, and not only for their financial support as a sponsor for this evening's session, but also for their commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity, as well as their commitment to communities here in our area and the communities they serve. So thank you very much, Enbridge. We appreciate that support. So almost enough from me, but just really quickly, tonight we're going to be talking about transgender awareness and education, and it's an opportunity to learn a lot more, and to learn from a personal journey, which I think that is really so fantastic for all of us. It makes everything that we're learning real and tangible. And the goal is to increase our collective understanding and awareness about this particular topic, and the impact for individuals and families, and for our community. And as I've said, the session is being recorded, and I will just remind anyone, if there's something that triggers any kind of stress or concern, feel free to reach out to some of our wonderful partners who can provide supports and services. And remember that 211, if you don't know where to turn and you're looking for any kind of information, 211 is always there for you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists, and I will introduce two with a little more detail here in a moment, and the remaining two after we finish with our first sort of section of the evening. So let me start by introducing Carson and her dad. And so Carson is with the Ingersoll nurse-led practitioner clinic. She is a walk-in counselor there. She's the intake coordinator and does counseling for the Oxford County Community Trans Clinic, and as well as the co-chair for the Oxford County Rainbow Coalition. And it's because of a program that we work with the nurse-led practitioner clinic and Carson on that this idea has come forward. And so we're really thrilled to welcome Carson to join us this evening as part of a duo, if you will, because she is joined by her dad. And her dad is Kieran. And Kieran is a 57-year-old transgender man. He has 2 daughters, 2 stepdaughters, and a granddaughter. Graduated from Wilfrid Laurier in 1989 with a Bachelor of Psychology degree. He's worked in the field of social work for over 33 years. He began working with young offenders at a detention center, and he's been working as a children's services worker for Family and Children's Services Guelph, Wellington County for over 22 years. He works primarily with older youth who are living independently. He's an advocate for anti-racism and 2S LGBTQIA plus rights. Carson's going to talk about that in a little bit. And he has dedicated much of his career working on committees to change policies within his organizations and to raise public awareness of the systemic oppression and discrimination of BIOC and 2S LGBTQIA plus clients face. He believes that as service providers, they have a responsibility to change the system and to make it equitable and accessible for everyone. There's a whole lot more, and I know that Kieran may touch on some of it, but what I think is really important is the connection to youth and youth programs and services, as well as Kieran's personal journey and the story for he and Carson and their family. And so I'm just going to scoop to a little bit towards the end of the bio to say that when he was growing up, he did not have any role models or anyone to talk to about his experience as a trans youth. It was not until his 40s that he began to explore his gender identity and began his transition. He is hopeful that by being visible as a trans man for youth, they will see that there are other people like them and that they are not alone. And in his free time, he enjoys going to his cottage and spending time with family, friends, and dogs. So again, the dogs and the barking, I think we're all in that same boat. So I am going to welcome Carson and Kieran, and we're going to turn it over to them, and they have a PowerPoint to share with us. And then we will come back as our panel, and we will talk, and we will introduce Jesse and Amanda more properly, and then we will have a discussion. So Carson and Kieran, the screen is all yours. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing your very personal story.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kelly, for the introduction. And it's such an honor to be here. It's such a dream of mine to do this advocacy work. So I really appreciate United Way for making this happen. Can everyone see the screen okay? I guess I'll ask our panelists. All good? Okay. Okay, so I'm Carson. I'm Kieran's daughter. And as Kelly said, I'm the walk-in counselor at the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner-led clinic, as well as the intake coordinator and the counselor for the Oxford County Trans Clinic, which we'll talk a bit about later. All right. Let me just, oh, there we go. So I'll start off just by explaining why this topic is so near and dear to my heart. So it's a big part of my personal story. So I was born, now Kieran was actually initially my birth mom. And I have a mama who was Kieran's partner at the time. So we were born with a sperm donor as our donor dad. And as a child, it was very normal for me. I'd be in the grocery store telling everyone, I have two moms. I was very excited about it. I know a lot of people often ask me about like what that experience was like, and I always say it's normal for us, and everyone's wondering what's going on in your household. And I say, like, we eat, spaghetti, and we do like things like other people are doing. It's not rainbow spaghetti, it's just regular spaghetti. So I'm very proud. So it's a big part of my personal life being an advocate. And then as I went to school, I started to realize that this was something that I wanted to pursue professionally. So when I was in school, it was always the joke that every time we had a project, I would figure out some way to make it to us LGBTQIA+. Like it would be something totally off and I would figure out a way to pull it in because I really wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand and I wanted to make a better world where people can be who they are and feel okay to do that. So then it also when I became a social worker, it became a professional interest. So when I was a student, I would ask to take on any clients that are 2S LGBTQIA+. I worked in Toronto. I worked right down by Church Street. It was always like a big dream of mine. And then when I started walk-in at the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner-led clinic is where the trans clinic came from. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. And this is my family pictures in the slide. So my mama and Kieran are separated. And my mama is remarried to Michelle. And you can see some of their wedding pictures there. And a lot of people in my family are in the 2S LGBTQI+ community. And I do always want to say that I am not personally a member of the community. I hope to be seen as an ally. So I don't speak from a place necessarily of a lived experience. So I do want to recognize that. And I will do my best to provide some education based on my personal knowledge as a child of members of this community. So I always like to start off by doing some definitions and explaining, because I know people have a lot of questions. And I want to talk a bit about some definitions, and these might look very familiar to a lot of people. Some people might know a few of the different terms there, and there's so many more. There's so many more identities than just on that screen. So I'm only going to speak to a few of them, but I want to recognize that there's many, many more identities out there. So I want to first talk about as far as trans as a term. So I'm going to start by talking about sex assigned at birth. So when we're born, we're assigned a sex. I think there is often the idea that it's just kind of known, but it's actually assigned to us. And there's a difference between your sex and your gender identity and your gender expression and your sexual orientation. So these are all very separate things, but in our society, we tend to clump them together and make assumptions based off of them. So the panelists and I were talking about language. Language is very, very important. And in this community, it is very important. And for some people, it's not as important. So to have a label on their identity is super important. For some people, it's really not important and they want to get away from the labels. So I want to make help bring an understanding to that. And what you can do as an ally is to listen to the language that people are using, ask, about pronouns, things like that. And we can talk about that a little bit more, but make sure that the language that you're using is aligning with the language that is fitting for that person. So gender and sex are separate. So your gender, we typically know with sex is male, female, but there is actually another sex that we tend to not talk about, which is intersex. So when we're born, sometimes we are born with, we're born intersex, which might mean that your chromosomes or your sex hormones or your genitals don't quite fit into those medical binaries, and binary means opposite, like polarizing kind of terms. So that actually, I think that's like 1 in 1,000 people, don't quote me on that exact stats, actually are born intersex. And I know back in the day, they would often say when the baby was born, the doctor would just decide what they thought the sex was and go from there. And they would say, never tell the child, just, try to carry on like socially what a typical male or female, whatever they decided would be. And a lot of those kids end up growing up feeling like, this doesn't quite fit for me. And even sometimes the parents would have surgery and stuff done in hopes that they would never know, and this was causing a lot of complications for people. So gender sometimes can match sex assigned at birth, but sometimes it doesn't. So gender and gender identity is how you see yourself, how you identify. So for example, for myself, I was assigned female at birth and I identify as female. So that when your gender and sex align, they typically call it cisgender. And when your sex assigned at birth doesn't necessarily match with your gender identity, that's where the term trans will come in, and it's an umbrella term. So there's other identities that fall under that term. Now, gender expression, you can see with the little unicorn here, I always like using the unicorn. You can see that they're separate, and it's very visual. I like it. It's a good image, like when you're talking to youth about this, to break it down. So for example, so my gender identity, I identify as female, and the way that I express that is going to be very unique to me. It means whatever I mean. And the way you express your gender, when you really think about it, everyone's so different. And a lot of times it's very cultural. There's the cultural piece as well. So for me, it might be the way that I move my body through the world. It might be the way that I dress. It might be certain things. And it's so different to each person. So there's a conversation at one point where it was like girls wear flowers, but are flowers feminine, or are they masculine, or are they neither, right? It kind of depends on the person. So moving forward, so that's where the pronouns, well, I guess we should also talk about sexual orientation, but I want to go pronouns first. So pronouns are often matching with the gender identity. So for example, with my pronouns are she and her, but there's also neo-pronouns, which are sometimes gender neutral pronouns. For example, ZE is a pronoun, EY, EM are pronouns. We're starting to understand this more as a society, and people can kind of choose their own identities. It doesn't have to be, here's the list, pick from the list. You can be whoever you want to be. And then going back, and then pronouns is very important because for a lot of people, because it's acknowledging like who you are and how you want to be addressed, right? So it's very, very important that you are, ask pronouns. And if you make a mistake on someone's pronouns, apologize and move on. Do not make it the other person, that their pronouns job to say, don't worry about it, don't feel bad. It's not their job to comfort us if we make a mistake. Acknowledge it and move forward. Okay, so sexual orientation, there's many different types of sexual orientations, and this often is kind of who you're attracted to. Could be physically, could be emotionally, could be both. So I have a list of a few different sexual orientations, and there's myths with some of the different sexual orientations that are on this list. So for example, asexual is a person who experiences little or no sexual attraction to people of any gender. There's a myth that these are people that are choosing to be celibate, but it's different than celibacy. It's an identity. It's a different thing. Bisexual tends to mean a person who's attracted to more than one gender. Gay tends to mean attracted to same sex. A lot of times we think of it as males who are attracted to males, but I know like a lot of females that are attracted to females will often identify as gay. Lesbian often tends to define females attracted to females. Heterosexual is a gender attracted to the opposite gender. Homosexual is the same sex, same gender attraction. And the thing that I do want to point out is all these definitions have to do with sex when you look at the definition, but we want to think about it more as genders versus sex. And for some people, it will matter about their gender may have a lot to do with the definition of their sexual orientation, and for others it may not. So try to keep your mind open. That's always my approach, is try to be open-minded. Be willing to take the information and take it as learning and understanding. Pansexual is a person who's attracted to other people regardless of their gender. Two-spirit is an Indigenous term, and it is an umbrella term encompassing gender and sexual diversity in Indigenous communities. The English language does not encompass fully what the definition of two-spirit is, so I do not want to try to define it that way. But I do always want to recognize with two-spirit, it was an identity in Indigenous, and still is in Indigenous communities, that was highly, highly respected and celebrated in the community. And when colonialization happened, this was often seen as shameful, and through colonialization, they tried to sort of make this identity invisible, which is really horrible. And I just wanted to speak to that. We did talk about intersex. Now, queer is a term that I know a lot of people know that used to be a derogatory term. It is now a reclaimed term that is an umbrella term for those whose sexual orientation or gender identities fall outside of cisgender or straight heterosexual norms. Questioning often are individuals that are exploring their identities, whether it's sexual identities or orientations or gender, and non-binary often is under the umbrella term of trans, where it's individuals that don't necessarily identify with being on either ends of the spectrum. So we also want to think about gender as being a spectrum. We all fall somewhere on that spectrum. So some people don't want to try to fit into a box of a certain identity, and that's okay. And that's great that we can be more fluid in our identities. All right, so that's sort of my definitions. I might speak a bit more to some of the definitions or some of the topics that I mentioned later. I do want to introduce my dad, Kieran. Very proud that he's here with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Carson and Kelly. Of course, the pug is barking right now at the chipmunks in the backyard. So I apologize to the group, to the viewers and listeners. Sorry about that. So I'm Kieran, and I'm very, very, very honored to be here, to be invited by United Way, Oxford County. Thank you so much for inviting me, Kelly. I really appreciate having a chance to share my story with everyone tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a slideshow. So Carson's going to help me work through that, and I'll get her to start that. So I wanted to talk to you tonight about what it was like for me growing up being trans, and where I've come from and who I am now. So starting off in the early years, these are some pictures of me as a little baby. And I think that, you know, my gender at birth was assigned female. And I think as early as I can remember, I felt that I was a boy. I didn't know about gender. I just knew that I thought I was a boy. And yeah, I told my parents growing up that I was a boy, and of course they were saying, no, you're not a boy. And my mom used to keep a journal of a baby book of my life story, and every year she would write, and I'll use my dead name was Karen at the time, Karen thinks she's a boy. And you'd read this year and next year and the next year, it would be the same entry in the journal that I thought I was a boy. So here's some pictures of me. That's my mom and dad when I was born, and you can see that my hairline is getting back to birth-like, right? Especially in that picture. So that's some effects of testosterone, unfortunately. So yeah, so growing up, I think as early as 3, I thought I was a boy. Carson, you can move on. So here I am. I think I was around 2 and 3 in these pictures. I'm a child protection worker, and as you can see, I did a horrible job looking after my child as a child, and my baby's not well taken care of there. Yeah, I just really, you know, they got me dolls, and they tried to help me, you know, get me playing with things like, you know, that are typically assigned to females as like dolls and things like that. And I actually quite preferred like fishing and doing outdoor things. You know, I always wore a baseball cap whenever I could. They used to tease me about that. I'd always have a ball cap on whenever I had a chance to have one. And in this little picture here with my little sailor suit, I love that suit because for me, that was, I felt like I looked like a boy in that suit. And then of course my mom would try to get me in an outfit like this one on the right here, you know, with the hair and all. So that was really not how I felt comfortable. I prefer to wear boys' clothes. I remember when I was, I think in grade 1, my grandfather bought me boys' running shoes, and I just loved them. I wore them to school proudly, and my mom was mortified that he should do such a thing. Like, why would you buy her these boys' running shoes? But for me, it was like that was my gender expression. Like Carson mentioned, gender expression. I wanted to dress and look like a boy. because truly that's how I felt I was. I remember there was a story that like my mom and dad would let me go to the beach or to the cottage and wear just the bottoms of my bathing suit, and I loved that because then I felt like I was a boy and I could romp around and do what I wanted. And there was a time that in swimming lessons I was not allowed to wear this bottom, and my mom was stuck up in the balcony where they had to watch, and I marched out there on the deck of the pool with just my bottoms on, and my mom was like losing her mind up there, just like, oh my god, what is happening right now? But I just didn't care. I was going to do what I wanted to do, and I was pretty happy to do that. So as my life went on, you know, I'd wish every birthday cake, I wished I was a boy. I would, you know, please let me grow hair on my chest like my dad. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to be a boy so bad. But I had I had no language for what was happening to me. I didn't know what trans meant. Um, I don't think back in the 60s, 70s, like people really didn't talk about what it was like to be trans, or I didn't have, like I said in my bio, I didn't have any role models. I didn't know what trans meant. So all I kept saying was to my parents, I'm a boy. I wanted to be a boy, identified as a boy. Um, and even when I had my own like dolls, when they forced me to play with dolls, I used to actually say the doll came in a box at Christmas and her name was Cindy. Well, I changed the name to Scotty, and then I would like change the hairdo on the little girl doll because like it was just cloth, didn't have any genitals, so I just would put boy doll clothes on it, and I changed my actual doll's gender. I was like ahead of my time, I think, around this whole transition thing. Who knew? But yeah, when I would play house with my friends, I'd want to be the dad. Like all my other girlfriends would like be like, oh, who's gonna be the dad? And I'd be like, yep, that I'll take that on. I'll do that part in playing house. So I always really quite enjoyed that. Yeah, so here I am in my teen years. Growing up teen years, at the one picture here, I'm in my pantsuit. I was in grade 8, and my friend Kim and I were the only two that decided we're going to be brave and wear a 3-piece pantsuit to our grade 8 graduation. Everyone else wore dresses, but my mom, of course, you noticed the little flower she had to stick in my hair because just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that she was a girl, not a boy, right? So yeah, I guess I was pretty compliant then. Wait till I tell you what's coming. So yeah, I remember in home ec, because girls had to take home ec and boys got to do shop when I was in grade school, in grade 7 and 8. So like I hated sewing. Like I had no clue how to sew. Like I couldn't even thread the bobbin. Like it was a nightmare. But I'd have to do these projects, and so the girl projects were a wraparound skirt. And I said to my mom, I am not making a wraparound skirt. Like there's no way. So we got permission for me to make a vest, but I didn't make the vest. I used to sneak my project home in my bag, and then my mom would sew it, and then I'd bring it back all completed. So I don't know how the teacher didn't catch on that I wasn't really sewing in class. I guess she was probably distracted, but yeah. So, you know, the things that we're forced to do in our gender stereotypes, I really didn't enjoy that much. So yeah, so in high school, these are some pictures of me in high school, and like I know this, you people in the panel have heard this joke, but I had the best eyebrows in high school, I have to say. I really thought like they were on fleek. So, and then I overplucked them, and then it was a disaster. So now as a man, I have to go get microblading to have like some thick eyebrows. So yeah, so don't touch your eyebrows, people. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, so in high school, I mean, I tried to date boys. I tried to fit in. I played a lot of sports. I played on pretty much every sports team there was going. Yeah, and dating was tough because I tried to date boys and it just didn't work out. Like I tried. Like I did try to fit in with my peers. And back in high school, we didn't really talk about being gay or being lesbian, but I knew like since a very young age, like you know, in your teen years when you start having crushes, I had crushes on girls. So I started thinking, well, then I must be a lesbian. That must be my identity. My sexual orientation must be lesbian because I'm attracted to women. Um, and so I, at 17, came out as being lesbian. Actually, my parents were snooping around in my room and found some love notes to a girl, and then they were confronted me and said, "What's this about?" And I said, "Well, I'm a lesbian." And they said, "Well, if you're going to be a lesbian, then you need to leave home." So I was actually kicked out of the house at 17, and or I had the choice of staying home and being straight, but that just wasn't, this is what I was saying. I worked up, I was like pretty like rebellious. I like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move out. So I moved out, and it was really hard. It was very lonely. I struggled a lot. I was working part-time at Zayres and trying to go to high school, started dropping off my school teams because I just couldn't work and live on my own and do all that. And so that was really hard for me. And I was trying to keep my life secret. I was trying to keep my sexual orientation hidden from my good friends because I was ashamed and because nobody talked about it. And of course, my parents didn't help with that. They shamed me and made me leave home. So yeah, so I, it was hard. I used to like, be carrying my laundry to the laundromat and be just praying somebody with a car I knew would drive by and help me out because it was hard. And that's why I think what I do for a job now, I work with youth. I can really relate to some of the struggles they deal with. And we are seeing in my role as a child protection worker, I work with children in foster care or in care, and we're seeing a lot of youth come into care that are 16 to 18, and they're on a voluntary youth service agreement. That has just come into play since 2018. Before that, kids that age range would fall through the cracks, and a lot of the kids we're seeing are identifying as trans. So that's really important to mention today because otherwise those kids would end up on the streets. They would be or homeless or getting involved in survival sex just because they wanted to pay the bills and have food on the table. I mean, I can relate to some of that. I took actually home ec in grade 13. We had grade 13 back then. I took grade 9 home ec just so I could have one meal a week that I knew we'd cook in class because I didn't have a lot of money for food. So I can totally relate to what some of our kids are going through. And that's why like it's so important that we have services that we can offer these youth. So here I am in my early adult years. I really regret that mullet. I have to say, you think you're gonna have a really popular hairstyle. Now this is my grad photo. I haven't gone back to university. This is it. I'm stuck with this mullet for the rest of my eternity while this photo is shown. But anyway, my early adult years, I started finding my people, my community, which are the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. I met other gay people, lesbians, and I actually moved out of Guelph, where I'm from, and I moved to Kitchener. And that's where kind of like the nightlife was. We had like a gay bar there. There was one, I think, and we'd head out there Thursday nights and Saturdays. And that would be our like literally if we had $20 in our pocket, that's what we spent it on. Like we literally would go and spend that $20 to go out and have some fun with our people, because still that was the 80s, and even in the 80s being gay wasn't all that accepted, right? There's still some hiddenness. I don't even know if that's a word, but hiding of it, sort of thing. And so it was nice to be with your community. And in this photo is a picture of me and one of my first true loves. And yeah, this was a New Year's Eve party. So yeah, I think this is when I first started really getting serious about dating women. So with my mullet, so we can move on. And then this brings us into like where I have to say it was some of the happiest years of my life with absolutely no regrets, is having my wonderful children. My partner Nancy at the time and I decided to we were together for a few years, and then we decided we wanted to have children. So we got a sperm donor, and even back in, that was the 90s, early 90s, that was kind of controversial to get a sperm donor to have children. So I decided that I was going to be the one to have the children. And here I have little baby Carson and little baby Brody. And I mean, I couldn't be prouder of my kids, how they've turned out all right with the two lesbian moms. They actually turned out all right. So I'm super proud of Carson. She's she walks in my footsteps, and I mean, I don't get me choked up here, but I'm just so proud of her that she's an ally and she's taken on the role that she has in terms of her career. And then my youngest daughter, Brody, is doing her PhD in science. It's cellular and molecular biology. And if I don't get that right, she gets upset, but I'm getting it right. And I'm going to admit that she got those brains from the donor. I'm going to just full disclosure, not from me. So yeah, these are a picture of my kids and me and when they're little, and my nieces and nephews in the bottom pictures. And yeah, motherhood was a really an awesome time for me, and absolutely no regrets for doing that. And here I am later on. Nancy and I, we split up, but we ended up, we co-parented very well together, and our kids were our priorities. So we didn't, our issues were our issues, and we left them there. And together, we did a lot of stuff together with the kids. We went to every sporting event. We went, Nancy would come pick us up in the morning for a volleyball tournament, bright and early, honking the horn at the end of the driveway, get out there, and away we'd all go as a family. So, and then I met another partner, Leslie, and that's Leslie in the photo. And that's me before I decided to have top surgery. So this is around my early 40s. I was really, Leslie and our partnership, she kind of knew I'd kind of always identified as male. And so she kind of accepted me for who I was. And I just wasn't feeling, I was just feeling that it was just getting harder and harder. I guess you could call it gender dysphoria is a term that you use. I'm sure Jessie will talk more about that in her medical part, but when people have gender dysphoria and things don't match, it's very distressing. So I decided to have top surgery, which I ended up paying for myself. And I think that we were the girls, Carson was in grade 8 then. And I remember telling the girls I was going to do this, and they were like, why? Why on earth would you want to do that? But at that time, I wasn't out as trans. I wasn't talking to them about being trans. I just told them, like, I just didn't like how I was looking and I wanted to change that. So they accepted that, and we went along with that. But I was still getting, I thought I looked very masculine in these pictures, and you could say probably not. I was probably pretty beautiful, wasn't I? But anyways, I thought I looked very male and masculine, and I obviously didn't. So I was getting misgendered a lot. I was getting called female, ma'am, and you gals, and talking about language and being, how that those labels kind of affect people if their gender isn't matching. So it really was distressing. I hated that. So I decided then to take it a step further, and my mom got really sick with cancer, and she died very quickly. So I had just turned 50, and I realized, like, life is short. My dad had already passed away. He passed away when I was 37. So life's short. I'm thinking, like, why am I living my life when I'm not who I am? Like, I need to be my authentic self. So before testosterone, these are some photos of me. And again, I thought I looked pretty masculine, but hence I wasn't. And so I decided I was going to contact the Arch Clinic, and that's in Guelph. And that's similar to what they're doing up in Ingersoll. It's a clinic where I could go and I could talk about my gender identity, and they would prescribe hormones for me and help me through that. So they have a trans program in Guelph as well. Large waiting list, and I waited to get in, and I decided to go and do that. So Karsten can move on. And I started taking testosterone. So in 2016 is when I had my first shot, and that was on International Women's Day, which I think is so ironic. So no longer a woman, I'm going to be taking testosterone and take male hormones. So I think that was pretty funny. So yeah, so this is some me after taking testosterone. When I decided to start that, they're very careful of, you need to know what side effects are. You need to know what the lasting effects of that are going to be. Some things can be reversed and some things cannot. And you need to have an awareness before they're just going to give you those hormones. You need to have an understanding of what that's going to be like for you. So I was all about it. I'm like, yes, give me those shots. And I was there the next week and started, and I can't be happier. That's where things really started to change for me. I started changing how I looked. And I just started becoming on the outside who I always felt like I was on the inside. And I don't think, unless you've been in that position, you don't know what that feels like. It just feels like so good to align yourself. People ask me, well, when did you know you were trans? And I knew, like I said in the story, that it was around 3 years old. I had an awareness that I was not the gender assigned at birth. But I also think cisgender people take that for granted. No one ever had to ask you, when did you know you were cisgender? You just when that was just what your life was about, right? You didn't have, you aligned and you just carried on. So when you're trans and that doesn't fit, it's very distressing. So that's why it's so important to have access to healthcare, where you can get the things you need to be who you are. And I'm not an expert on, my trans journey is not everyone's. And transitioning for one person may look different for another person. I, like I said, I started with the chest surgery, and then it wasn't enough. And then then I needed more, I needed hormones. So then that's when I changed my name. I changed my name to Kieran. And there's a lot in that process, going through a name change, changing your ID, all those things. It's quite a process. But as soon as all that lines up for me, then it felt really good for me. Now, I did decide to do bottom surgery, and that is, I did that in 2019. Surgery is actually, and hormones, like hormones are covered through my drug plan at work. Surgery is covered by OHIP now to a certain extent. I could have chest surgery, but I would have to pay extra for masculinization of that chest. So it's not fully covered for trans people. Some people have to fundraise, like some trans women have to pay for their chest enhancement, their breast enhancement, if their hormones isn't enough to grow breast tissue. So it's not fully covered. Now, my bottom surgery was fully covered, and that was done in Montreal. But again, the barriers to healthcare, like I had to travel. I had to have someone go with me. Some people don't have access to that. They don't have, especially our youth, like they don't have money to go travel to Montreal, or they may not even, kids that are living outside of their family home, parents might not be supportive. So they may not have someone to take them or to be by their side through that. So some things to consider around some of the barriers for healthcare. So here I am in work life. I work for Family and Children's Services. Like I said, I've been there 22 years. I started off in my, for our Children's Aid Society campaign, I started off as Karen. And when I decided to transition, I made them change the poster. So they went and did another photo shoot, and I've now got this in our lobby with my pug, who's right here and is behaving at the moment. So yeah, so in terms of my work life, it's important if people here are from organizations that are going to support their co-workers and workers, there needs to be benefits and time for people to go have surgery. You have to think about it in sick time. You have to think about, how are you going to, for me, I just went to HR and I told people I'm going to change my name, and they asked me, well, how do you want to tell the all staff? And I said, let's just do an email and say my name's changing and I'm transitioning from female to male. And if people had questions, they could come and ask me, and that's what we did, and that actually worked really well. I've been really fortunate to have great colleagues, and the youth that I've worked with have all been accepting. I've had really accepting family members, and that's really quite a privilege, because a lot of people don't have that, and I don't take that for granted whatsoever, because I know there's a lot of kids that I work with that are out of the house because of just who they are, and that's really sad. So at my work, like we made sure there's a gender neutral bathroom, and I think that all bathrooms should be gender neutral myself. I think signage should just have a toilet on them, and then people know that's where they go to the bathroom. There doesn't need to be even like the half woman, half man. I like that, but we don't even need that. We just need a toilet. That's it. That's all we need. That because bathrooms for trans people can be a very scary place. And if you're in the bathroom before your transition, or your gender identity doesn't look like that person on the door, so, like, to go in, there's nothing worse than people saying, excuse me, you're in the wrong bathroom. When, like, I sometimes, before in those photos, I would go to the women's bathroom and they'd say, excuse me, sir, you're in the wrong bathroom. And I'd be like, I know what bathroom I'm in, thank you very much, I don't need you to tell me. But it can also be very dangerous. Like, trans women face much more violence than trans men. And especially if you're a Black trans woman, you're, the violence rates are even higher. So, I know we talk a lot about bathrooms and trans people, being trans is more than bathrooms, right? It is like access to healthcare. Access, you know, when I go to emerge, are people going to know how to deal with me and my issues? You know, it's like housing, employment, those sort of things that we face as trans people. You know, there's a lot of discrimination. If you look a certain way, you might not get hired for the job. Or I could go to if I didn't work for Children's Aid, I could go to work and tell them I'm transitioning and they could fire me. Even though it's against the Human Rights Code, they could find a reason, right? You know, or they may not hire me in the first place. So you have to think about all the barriers that trans people face. And yeah, I think that, you know, I'm very fortunate where I work. And I just hope that other people's employment can be as good as what I've had. So recent years, here I am. I got to go to Italy for my 20th anniversary. I have done some podcasts for She Is Your Neighbor. I did that for Women's Crisis Services, and I talked about what it's like to be a youth in care, and especially for trans youth and what they face. I am a SOGI trainer for Ontario's Children's Aid Society. So we are training all children's aides on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and to make sure that we're providing services through that lens, so that everyone gets equity and people receive services and they're treated how they should be. So I do that training as well. And I coach volleyball. I've done that. I think that's like around 13, 14 years. And I quite enjoy that. I coach volleyball at a high school. I used to do rep teams, but now I just do high school, and I really love that. And yeah, here I am now. This is the recent years. This is who I am, and I can't be happier. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. I don't know if I'm within the time limit, but I do ramble. So I'm hoping that everyone enjoyed that presentation, and I know there's going to be time afterwards for questions, and I really would love to invite you to ask any question that you would like to ask me. I think it makes it real when you've actually met a trans person, and you know it's just not an idea. You've actually met somebody now in this presentation who is trans, who, you know, you've heard my journey, and I couldn't be happier. So I am just thrilled that Oxford County is going to run this program, and you're going to meet the needs of you know, your community. And with the Help United Way doing that, I just am elated. So thank you so much for listening to my story, and we'll turn it over to Kelly to introduce the next speakers.
Before I do that, Kieran, I just want to say thank you so very much. To share such a personal journey is not easy. It's not easy to public speak at the best of times, and such a personal journey is even more challenging. But such a compelling journey, and really, I think you're right. For many people who may not have had the pleasure or the knowledge of meeting someone, you made this real. And you know, at the beginning, I said our goal with this series is to shine a light so that we can build awareness and understanding and empathy. Because I think, to quote Oprah, when you know better, you do better. And when you understand, right? And so you really helped us understand the journey, your journey, but to feel that journey along the way. So thank you so
My
very,
pleasure.
very much.
Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled. And Carson, thank you for the unicorn, because I think that for people that are not in a situation, perhaps in a workplace that's doing a lot of work around diversity, inclusion, and equity, or perhaps not in school, again, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think that was a really great overview. And I'm actually going to quickly apologize before I introduce Jesse and Amanda. I actually had a piece that I was supposed to add at the end of my land recognition, my territory acknowledgement this evening, and missed it in my notes. But I want to mention that today, May 5th, is the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Plus. It is known as Red Dress Day, and it's intended to honor the thousands of women who never returned home to their communities. So the red dress is a symbol of the violence that Indigenous women face every day. And in Canada, Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus community members are 12 times more likely to go missing or to be killed. So I think that piece today and every day needs to resonate with folks. So I apologize that I didn't have that at the beginning. And now we're going to move on and introduce our remaining panel members. And so I will keep this piece quite brief as well, and then let both Jessie and Amanda do a far better self-awareness acknowledgement as well. So Jessie is the clinical director and lead nurse practitioner at the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner led clinic. So Jessie, I'll start off with you. If you could, because we've met Carson and Kieran, and so I'll ask you to just say a little bit about yourself and your role and your organization, and then we'll move over to Amanda to do the same.
Absolutely. And I just want to say as well, this is the second time I've heard that presentation, and it's even better the second time. So it's just so engaging and informative and inspiring. So thanks, Kelly. So I'm Jessie. I'm a nurse practitioner here at the Ingersoll NPLC. I also am in the role of the clinical director or the lead NP. So I sort of wear two hats. I think the most important job, number one, is that I am the primary care provider for hundreds of patients here in Oxford County. And our clinic as a whole provides care to almost 3,000 patients throughout Oxford region. So much like you'd see your family doctor, I have patients who come see me every day, all ages, across all lifespans, and all gender identities. So I work alongside Carson, and what we'll talk about next is how we're excited to be offering gender affirming care and specific trans supports moving forward. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. And Amanda, if I could ask you to say a little bit about yourself, and for people that may not know, Amanda is the PRISM program coordinator with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Oxford County, as well as the vice president for Oxford Pride and the Oxford Rainbow Coalition. So Amanda, if you'd just like to give a little brief intro of yourself as well.
Yeah, hi friends, my name is Amanda. My pronouns are she and her. Thank you, Kelly, for having me, and Kieran for sharing your story. I love hearing your story. I think you're super amazing. So yeah, I'm the PRISM program at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Oxford County, and I do work with the Oxford Pride Committee, getting involved in community through that. And I also co-chair with the amazing Carson here at the Rainbow Coalition. So I do get myself involved in the community. I have a great respect for the community. I myself am part of the queer community, and I'm just honored to be a part of the community. And I think to show that honor is take action and really do what I can to advocate for the queer community.
Thank you very much. And so I'm just going to ask a few questions, and we're going to have a casual conversation for the rest of our time this evening together. And so my first question is I'm going to specifically kind of ask Amanda, but everyone can chime in, of course. So sometimes in a smaller rural community, it's easy to think that some of the things we talk about are happening in society, but they're not maybe happening here. And that some of these things might be urban based, or they're maybe not relevant, et cetera. And yet we know the need for supports and services for those along the transgender journey at all age brackets and groups is a people issue. And the thing about Oxford County is we have people, so it's our issue too. And our supports are needed. And so can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like as from an Oxford lens, like why this really does matter. So for people who may not think that there's a need, we know that there's a need. And so between Carson, Amanda, and Jesse, could you speak a little bit about the need here in Oxford County for the supports and services you offer?
Yeah, it's super easy to assume that your small community doesn't have the issues or diversity that a larger city would have, right? And the reality is all areas have these issues and has this diversity. And I love how you shared that this is a people issue, right? Because yeah, you're right, we do have people, and because it is across our county, it is across our cities. You know, and oftentimes smaller communities don't have the resources that large communities have. And trans folks may not have the ways to get to larger cities, to get to these resources. And so,
transportation is a huge issue in rural communities. And we know that's an issue across Oxford. You know, it really is challenging.
It really is, right? Mm-hmm. And if we don't have these resources, why would they come to us? Why would they come and share that they need connections, especially if we as a county, we can't offer those resources, right? So having things like the PRISM program, the Trans Clinic, the Rainbow Coalition, Oxford Pride Committee, it's super important for our trans friends to feel supported and feel connected in Oxford County.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think I was reading something, because I'm an academic and all of that stuff, but the Trans Pulse project, which looked at individuals who identify as trans across Ontario, they found, and I just pulled it up here, that approximately 70% of trans Ontarians live outside of the Greater Toronto area. So we, like Amanda was saying, is that although, you know, urban centers are often sought out for support, really, we need to support everybody where they are at in their own communities, and timely care. That's I think most important.
You know, for almost all of the programs and services that United Way invests in, we really look at timely, local, accessible services and relationship-based. Those things, they matter for everything. They really do. Yeah. And Carson, I think you actually had a slide that we maybe want to put back up. And I think as Carson does that, I'll just remind her she's on mute. So I don't have to say it, because, you know, it's been done on a virtual platform before. And while she's getting to the slide, I just want to say, as an 80s high grad as well, I remember the whole mullet thing. So it was cool then, I just want to say. For those out there who don't believe it, it was cool then.
I think it's coming back too, Kelly.
Hope not.
Yeah, so I can everyone hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to share, I recently just learned of this. So I'm actually not originally from Oxford County. So I've been working in Oxford County just around a year now. And with Rainbow Coalition, I learned that Rainbow Coalition had partnered with Public Health to put out a report and was interviewing individuals in Oxford County that identify with the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And I was reading through the report, and I think a lot of people think, oh, this doesn't happen here. There's not a lot of discrimination. Like, I think we like to think that things happen elsewhere, but they are happening in Oxford County. And I picked a couple of quotes that really kind of struck a chord with me. And this was, I think the study was done in 2016 and then published in 2017. So I'll read a couple of quotes that I thought were really powerful and just show that we still have quite a ways to go as far as creating inclusivity and equity in Oxford County. So 52.6% of trans participants reported having to educate a provider, either a little, some, or a lot in their lifetime. Participants most often reported educating nurses and doctors. So it's kind of scary. Could you imagine going as a patient and feeling that you had to educate your provider on how to care for you, that's a scary feeling, right? So we want to try to increase that knowledge just kind of across the board. The most common experience reported regarding transphobia, harassment, and violence was hearing that trans people are not normal. 68.4% of participants reported hearing this sometimes or many times. Many also felt that they had to try to pass as non-trans to be accepted and reported being made fun of or called names. So that's really disheartening. That's more than 50% when we're thinking about it, right? And then participants who were asked about experiences of harassment and violence in Oxford County based on their gender identity, over half participants, 52.6%, reported experiencing silent harassment, such as being stared at and being whispered about. Verbal harassment and sexual harassment, for example, being catcalled or propositioned, were also common experiences. So this is fairly recent, right? Like this is not way old data. This is recent stuff that we really need to work on as a community.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that's really near and dear to us that we've learned over the years in talking to people is that the importance of belonging and acceptance and inclusion in community. And at first, when we started hearing about belonging, we'd think, well, what's belonging? But belonging is actually foundational to people's well-being and that sense of community and being a valued participatory member. And it really matters for people. And so it needs to be woven through what we all do here in our work. And so as we started our journey together here this evening, Carson spoke a little bit about, and then Jesse as well, a little bit about the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner led clinic, which is such a mouthful, by the way. But Jesse, could you tell us a little bit about the Trans Care program, a little bit of an overview of the spectrum, so that people can have a better understanding, and then maybe you and Carson about how you have identified that this was a gap, and how now you're making that difference, because I think that's a really fantastic learning through your journey as well.
Absolutely. So the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioner led clinic, say that 10 times fast. We've been here in Oxford County for over 10 years now. And like I said, so we're a team-based model of care, providing primary care services for thousands of patients here. In the last year, of course, with the generous funding and support and partnership with the United Way, we were able to onboard Carson in the role of a walk-in counselor for mental health and addictions. Around that time, I also joined the clinic in my role and was getting to know my patients and also onboarding and supporting new patients in the community. So, you know, I'm going to put this 100% back on Carson, because she is the passion. She's the one that's has driven this. But I do think it was sort of this natural progression as well. So, of course, we know her experience and her passion bringing to that, and she wanted to find a way to advocate and bring it to this community. But in that process, as I'm getting to know my patients and joining the clinic, I had noted, you know, a number identify as a part of the LGBTQ2+ or trans community. So for me as a primary care provider, I really recognize that I have the best relationship with my patients, and I needed to do my best to be able to support them. And primary care is foundational, and it's such an important role for supporting that, as Carson shared, that you know, people wouldn't feel supported going to their primary care provider, nurse practitioner, or family doctor. And as I mentioned, that providing timely care is so important. So from that, we decided to establish the Oxford County Trans Clinic. So if you look, it's mainly been word of mouth at this point, nothing, you know, official. We have just, of course, with planning and and getting education and clinical expertise, those that takes time, but you'll definitely see more information come out in the next few weeks about this. And this is almost the perfect opportunity to share that. So the thought with this program, Carson is going to be the first point of contact, our intake coordinator. Everyone will get to meet Carson, and we'll provide any support that we can. So whether that's mental health support regarding transition, or counseling supports, maybe just support or being able to provide more information for families or individuals who are newly identifying as trans or wanting to better understand their gender identity journey. And then where my expertise comes in from the medical side is for those patients who are not patients, those individuals who are interested in medical transition. That's where they could meet with me to discuss what options are available there. So, Kieran spoke a bit about the hormone replacement therapy. Sometimes it includes surgical referrals as well for those interested in that piece, and sometimes referral to what's called an endocrinologist or a physician who specializes in the endocrine system. So that's sort of a little glimpse of what we're hoping to offer, and it definitely is a work. I don't want to say a work in progress. No, it's we're evolving to meet the needs of our community and how we can best support our persons that we're supporting. So, and I do want to actually put a little throw out here. I see that Robin Hodgkin from the London Intercommunity Health Center is on, and she's been a fabulous support for both Carson and I. So as a mentor to support in questions, both Carson and I have had the opportunity. So I want to say thank you to her for supporting, giving us that great support. So
we will all thank her, because to be able to have this kind of service and support here in Oxford County for our Oxford County people really means a great deal. I mean, transportation is just one of many, many, many barriers for going outside of the community. So to have supports here for people here at home make a big difference. Amanda, I'm going to turn to you next, and I kind of have a multiple list of questions if I can, but I want to start specifically as a coordinator for the PRISM program at Big Brothers Big Sisters. Could you just tell us a little bit about what that is, and then I want to roll into some of your community work as well. But I think first, I think a lot of people may not even be aware of this program, and it's meeting a really important need in the community. And I know that you're always looking for volunteers. So it's a great opportunity to do that shameless plug for you guys. Carry on.
Yeah, I could talk about the PRISM program all day, so I'll try to keep it short. But PRISM is actually partially funded by United Way. So thank you, United Way, for that. For making it possible. So PRISM, I know a lot of you are probably hearing me say prison. I'm not saying prison, I'm saying PRISM. So it stands for Pride, Respect, Identity, Safety, and Mentoring. And what it is, it's entirely designed to connect 2S LGBTQ youth with 2S LGBTQ identifying adults, so that they have somebody to walk, whether it's on their gender journey, their sexuality journey, whatever it may be within their queer journey. And it's such an incredible thing to see. And not only do we do one-to-one mentoring, we've shifted into even doing group mentoring. And so it's a way to connect other youth who are a part of the community so that they don't feel so alone. They have other people to connect with and chat with and go through this journey together, right? And we're getting there all different ways. We do in-school mentoring, we do couples mentoring. Like, there's so many ways to get involved, and we have a wait list of amazing youth that they would fulfill so many great memories with you. Like, they I think of these kids and I can't help but smile. They're just such incredible little humans, and they're not even little, but I could use little because Big Brothers Big Sisters has littles and bigs. But yeah, if you want to get involved and make a bit of a difference in someone's lives and be there to see someone be authentically, amazingly themselves, it's a really great program to get involved with.
It absolutely is. You know, we are so honored to be a part of that work, and it doesn't make a little difference. It makes a huge difference. One of my very favorite longtime volunteers, who's a retired educator, has always said, one caring adult can change a child's life. One. And so for people that are you know, at home or at work, perhaps watching, you might be that one caring adult. And so that's a great opportunity at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And now if I can, and have you put another hat on, you have a few hats, but I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about the Oxford Rainbow Coalition, as well as Oxford Pride, so that people can understand a little bit about each of the organizations, both very important community organizations and complementary organizations, but also different in some of their roles and their activities. And so because you're on both, could you tell us a little bit so that the community can have a better understanding?
Yeah, for sure. So there's the Rainbow Coalition, and they have a mission. Their mission statement is to create a safer and more supportive Oxford County for all people to live, work, and play. And so the Rainbow Coalition is made up of a bunch of agencies within Oxford County who want to make a difference, support, share resources. But it's not just that, right? We have community members that are a part of it, part of the queer community. We have parents, caregivers who of youth who identify in the community. And what we do is we educate. You know, that's the job of the Rainbow Coalition, is to go out and educate. So that's through things like safer spaces, trainings, promoting the bathroom project, attending local events, creating open dialogue with people out in the community, and again, sharing resources with each other and with the community outside of it. And then there's the Oxford Pride Committee, who was actually born from the Rainbow Coalition in 2015. And that committee is made up of 2S LGBTQ community members as well as allies. And the Pride Committee creates connection in the 2S LGBTQ community. And this is done through events like our annual Oxford Pride Family Day, which is coming up super soon. Make sure you get out there. It's on Saturday, June 18th. I'm going to do a little plug because this is super exciting. Yeah, make sure you get out there. It's at Museum Square in Woodstock from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday, June 18th. We're going to have amazing talents out there. Always on Friday is a band that's going to be out there. Victor Quinlan, who's a fierce advocate and support for the trans community and the non-binary communities. The Gutter Boys, which is a drag show. Our host this year is Sadat. We're super honored to have her there. She's a queer youth entertainer and mental health advocate. So there's a lot of great things going on, and that's just some of the things going on. So I'm not going to tell you all of it because then you won't go. You need to come out to find out, right? So come on out. But yeah, so some other ways that and events that the Pride Committee does is we go out and we raise flags. So we're raising flags in Woodstock, Ingersoll, Tillsonburg this year. We do family bowling events, drag story times. We support community members, and we really just foster that sense of community and belonging.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm glad you got some plugs in. And and now I'm going to apologize to Amanda, because one of the things as we were prepping for this is she mentioned to me that I should really not be using the word guys all the time, which I actually hadn't realized I used it nearly as much as I do. So then I've been mindful. I have not been able to resolve this problem, but I'm mindful of how much I use it, and much to my mother's chagrin, way more than I ever thought. But I'm also watching others, and so I'm trying to learn. But before we get to our next question, it kind of is a great segue to language, and what language means, because it's not just pronouns that are part of the language. it's the things that we may not even realize because they're old habits. And old habits doesn't make them right, but they're again, when you know better, you work at learning and trying to be better. But does anyone want to maybe weigh in a little bit on some of the language that they would want people to be just thinking about a little more day to day?
I can speak a little bit to it. So we have to also think too, like right from the time that we have language, we start putting people into boxes. That's a lot of times the English language is about putting people into boxes. And even when you see people walking by, we're trained to go like boy, girl, and just make these assumptions based off of people's appearances. So when you start to think about different things that we're saying, like you guys or hey girls, sometimes that language it's gendered, right? And we don't know what people's identity necessarily is, and it's not fitting for everyone. It could be quite triggering when you're using different language like that. So it's important to start to think about some of these things that we maybe need to start changing with the language. And I don't know if anyone else would like to add as well.
I think I just want to throw one out there that really gets under my skin when I go out, but you hear people saying things like, hey ladies, or can I get you ladies at the restaurant, or, and right then and there, they're assuming a gender, they're assuming who you are when they have never met you before, they're just taking your drink order, right? So this, we've gotten feedback where these kinds of words can trigger gender dysphoria. And I know none of us are out there to harm, but we really just got to pay attention to what we're saying and value the fact that we have language, which means we can change language.
Very good point. And I think, and I can't remember who said it earlier, but also when you make a mistake, own it and carry on. So I'm trying. That's what I can say. So my next question is going to be to Kieran, if I may, and it's so if we're thinking about people who might be watching this and coming to terms with their own situation, thinking about their own life and experience, what are maybe some of your advice, or what do you wish you had known then? What you know now that you wish you'd known then. Like, what would you say to your younger self?
Wow, that is a great question. And I've actually thought about that a lot. And I actually have done some presentations to grade 5 classes. And I say that, like, this is where you should start. At 10 years old, you start talking about gender, you start talking about sexual orientation, because kids are open to it. And I think what I would say to myself is, don't be afraid, just be who you are. And I think I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid that people wouldn't accept me. And that fear kept me in a place where I wasn't my authentic self. So I couldn't truly be happy. So like you said, it takes one caring adult. And I think if I had had that one caring adult, that would have been, or a role model like Amanda's program is providing peer mentorship, that could have changed my trajectory 100%. But I think you have to trust people. You need to know that there's going to be people out there that are going to accept you. Like, even, though my parents didn't accept me and I was kicked out, I had friends and their parents accepted me. Or, I was constantly at my friend Sly's house for meals and sleepovers because her mom wanted to feed me because she knew I was starving. But like, you just have to, I think, trust people. I told my uncle, who was 90 years old, that I was transitioning. He was in an old folks home, and he couldn't hear a thing. So I wrote him a letter because I didn't want to be screaming it down. So I wrote him a letter. I told him I was transitioning. And so the next time I went to see him, he got up in his bed and he shook my hand and he said, "It's Kieran, right? It's Kieran, isn't it?" And I said, "That's right. Thank you." And he said, "You know what? It doesn't matter what anybody says about you or thinks about you. All it matters is what you think and how you're happy." And that really stuck with me. He's since passed, but he said, "You don't have to care what everyone else thinks. You just care about how you feel." So I think, like, you just can't, you got to give people the benefit of the doubt that people could be a lot more open than you expect. So that would be what I would tell my younger self. Be brave.
And I think maybe I'm going to start with you on this next question, and then others can contribute as well. But from a parent's perspective, or as well as any like family members or friends or coworkers who are trying to be supportive, trying to really stand by someone, what the question I'm sure comes to people's mind about what can I do? What can I do to be the best kind of support that I can be, or to, to fill that need or that void where possible? And so what are some of the things that people can do to help others as they're going through this journey?
Well, I think like some of the panelists have already said it. I think listen, take the cues from me, ask me questions. What are your pronouns? Like, what do you want to be? Like, how do you identify? And sort of take my lead, and I'll tell you what I need. And what I really appreciate is when I have allies that would stand up and say, no, you got the pronouns wrong, or that's he, or it's Kieran, not the dead name, or and I think it's very important that people try to get it right, try to get the gender correct. People are going to make mistakes. Like when I lived 50 years in a different body, in a different name, in a different role. I was a mom and now I'm a dad. Like, people are going to make mistakes, but I think what you need from others is just someone to be an ally, someone to listen. Amanda, what are your experiences like around some of this stuff?
I'm just sitting back. I adore you. I think you're so great.
Oh.
I think one of the biggest things is to understand that, you hear spectrum, and I'm not a fan of the word spectrum. And I recently heard constellations, right? And so I'm with that. I'm sticking with the constellations, and to understand that gender is constellations, and it's constantly shifting, and people are like, I'm continuing to understand who I am at almost, I'm not telling you what age, but I'm still figuring out who I am. So how can we just expect somebody else just to figure out who they are? With that's on us, and that's quite selfish, really, right? So we need to understand that this is a continuing journey, and that it might change, and we need to change with them, and accept and learn, and if we don't know, educate ourselves, and just be there and support, and like Kieran said, listen.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say, I think for me is being informed, like the education opportunities Amanda shared with the safer space training. I know I'll point out this here, my safer space sign. You can see that. I've had that up for a few months, and sorry, not a few months, over a year now. And a patient shared with me, she's sitting in the chair right here and looking across at it, and she says, I've been seeing this sign for the past few months, and she's like, and I feel safe that I could mention this, and to tell me about her gender journey and identity, and wanting to talk about that. And I thought, wow, the power of a sign, right? That we talked about the bathroom signage, removing the female and male, and just having it gender neutral, how important those little changes can make from an organization level. Being an ally, putting up safer space, and just knowing that it's that people are free to express and share who they are.
I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I want to give a little shout out to Tourism Oxford. They've been doing some really great work with community partners to build awareness and some understanding. And I've had the pleasure of sitting in on some of their sessions lately, and that safer space. So a lovely segue to that. And so I think maybe my last official question for the evening would be, when we look at things that are happening around the world, it's clear that safety and well-being, acceptance, inclusion, all of those things are really important, and sadly for far too many people missing in their lives. And so we know that safer space matters. And businesses and community groups and organizations like ours and others, a lot of groups are really working to better understand So again, so when they know more, they can do more and be better. And so could you, any of you, really give us a little bit of information about like what that means, what that looks like, safer places?
I can hop on. And one thing I love that the language got shifted to safer, you know, and I think that's really, really important to note, because we can never guarantee a safe space. As much as we would love to, we'd love to say like, this is a safe space. Unfortunately, we don't have control outside of ourselves, right? And so it's really important to say safer spaces or braver spaces, whatever language you choose in that sense. But yeah, even little things that you know, cisgender people would take for granted, or heterosexual even take for granted when thinking of traveling, right? You don't, you know, a lot of people will hop on, you know, my heterosexual cisgender friends are like, yeah, let's go to this place and this place and this place. I'm like, I'm not safe. Or, you know, like there's places that people don't even think of that we're not safe to be our authentic true selves, right? And people don't think about these things.
I also want to mention, it's similarly related, but even just looking at, if you're an organization, like your forms that you're using for intakes, right? And that was a big thing that we did when we started Walk-In, was collecting information to know who are we serving and what are your forms subtly saying, because sometimes there might be something said that has basically hidden meaning behind it, right? So I remember as a kid, they could have put on our forms parent 1, parent 2, but they always said mom and dad. And at that time I had 2 moms, and I always was just a constant reminder that I am different than the other kids. So just making your forms more inclusive. And when we changed the walk-in forms and made them more inclusive, we had so many people go, thank you so much for asking. And I'm so excited to tell you about my identity. And a lot of times as a counselor, that really helped me a lot to work with them and understand them, and sometimes even potentially get them resources specific to their demographics. So some of these things are things that we can be doing that they seem like such a small change, but are so big.
That, you know what, that is an amazing, like a specific thing right then and there. And you know, going back to some of the training opportunities that are provided, that Amanda mentioned, the community for organizations or for groups, or you know, there's some support out there to learn more, to look at it with a new lens. Absolutely. And I know that Amanda is going to be dashing in just a moment. And I promise for folks at home, we will finish up in just a sec. But I do have one last question that I think is really important. It's come in to ask from the audience, and it's to Amanda and Karen. What do 2S LGBTQIA+ children tell you that they wish their family would say or do to support them? That's better than my final question. So I think that's a great one to end on. But Amanda, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'll share kind of broad. I won't share details because I'm not going to. But a lot of it is just, you know, I just want to be accepted. You know, I just want to be loved for who I am. I'm gonna get emotional on this one, Kelly. And you know, it's really just that's all they want, is to feel that sense of connection to not only the community but to their family and to themselves. And yeah, thank you for that question. You know, our kids want belonging just like any of us do.
Karen?
Yeah, you just nailed it. Yeah, that's for sure. Kids just want to be loved. They want to be accepted, and yeah, they just want protection. They want to be protected in the home, that they want to be able to, that their parents are going to protect them and be by them and accept them no matter what. And you know, that's all they want, and so they can be who they are.
That is truly the best question to end with. Mine was about what's your one takeaway, but if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's that we all need to be accepted and belonged and treated well. Everyone deserves to have a good life in a good and welcoming community, and all of that really matters. And that we here tonight, and many others, the service organizations and many other organizations, the education sector, we are all part of that village to ensure that everyone can belong. So I just want to thank you all for joining us, and sharing your personal and professional and volunteer experience and roles, and the personal stories that truly make it real. And I think that for people at home, that is such a takeaway, to actually have a face and a story, and to be able to learn more in that very real way. So I am so grateful on behalf of United Way Oxford and all of our partners, and we're thrilled to be funding partners with the organizations here today, but also partners in our community work, and all of the others that are doing really wonderful work to support individuals, to encourage allies, and to do all of the things that we need to as a community. So thank you, each and every one of you, for joining tonight, and thank you for everyone who signed up and is joining from home or from work, to learn a little more, to be open to just the learning journey, as we all want to strive to be better and to be more informed, and our work towards a more caring community. So thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. We are really grateful. I'll remind you, it will be on our website, and it will be available, the recording, for you to use. And this is just one of our many Community United conversations, and we will be taking a break for the summer, but we'll be back indeed in the fall, with another really important a series of other really important community topics that each and every one of us will want to know more about. So thank you. Be well, everyone. Thank you again, panel. You're fantastic, each and every one of you.